holding him to the side. It was a good thing because I think it warms him out. But I've never had any trouble with it. June said he throws fits.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lebanon Board of Park Commissioners meeting, March 7th, 2018. I'd like to call the meeting to order and let the record show that all members are present except Shirley McLean. And if everyone has had a chance to look at the February minutes, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion we approve the minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, under old business this evening, we have Deb Schmucker of Cornerstone to make a presentation on our park master plan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Back in January, we talked our way through this particular presentation, but the video screens weren't working, so back for a command performance, as they say. I know that John has provided you with copies of the plans, and I know that he's had some discussions with you individually just to get some initial input. This evening, he just asked me to come back to the park board and walk through. We've made a couple minor modifications based on some of your early comments. And these are just master plans for Abner Longley Park and Memorial Park as you look to the future. And a lot of this discussion was predicated by the 5-year park master plan that we completed in 2017, and looking to the future as you look to continue improving the parks as you get ready to celebrate your 100th anniversary here coming up. So first we'll just talk about Abner Longley Park. We did the conservation park master plan that is a part of Abner Longley Park, that particular piece of property, as a part of the 5-year planning process. This is the southern portion of Abner Longley Park. And as we were just discussing upstairs, that as soon as my cursor hits the photo, you can't see it real well. But what you do know there is that there's an existing softball fields there now, but we're looking to the future, knowing that there's a great need for field space. So those 4 fields plus a concession area show the opportunity for future growth of the softball diamond complex. Then the property over here, and I think if I get it just over here, you might be able to see it as I cross this upper field. This property over here is a possible extension and expansion of the park, which there's an existing building or 2 on now. The northern building would stay, potentially for maintenance, et cetera, and then that would allow you to expand the parking, which is greatly needed in this area. We know that you have several different events. The conservation club property up here to the northeast that you can see just at the very top of the slide here provides overflow parking in the event for the future. And with the Symphony on the Prairie, we've talked about shuttles and different things going back and forth so that you can split up some of the parking. But an expansion there would also provide for, we've looked at a more permanent kind of band location there with a type of portable stage or band shell, which is the red rectangle there that you can kind of see right there on the side. And then next to that is a very small-sized ice skating area that could be temporary and utilized in the wintertime. And then there's lots of different kinds of temporary ice skating. Some are very expensive, some are less expensive, and an opportunity to try some different programming, which was one of the things we heard for wintertime. Update the play area. And then we've also talked about a splash pad for Abner Longley. We've looked at different locations. There is some consensus with different department heads and the mayor, et cetera, that they'd like to see it in this general location. As you get into further detail and get into looking at water line extensions and how to provide service to it, that space can ebb and flow as needed depending on your budget, et cetera. So, and then there's an existing berm right now just to the north of the existing parking lot that is just, that's the green area there just to the west of the conservation pond. A Sledding Hill was another request, so the most logical place for that was to expand that berm, raise it up, and as we look at potential other things within the park, some of the dirt could come from that and other city projects that may come along the way. The orange line indicates an extension of the bike trail and then walking path in and around the park. That was really important because we wanted to create individual loops within the park. I know we talked about with the conservation property, a loop around the pond, connecting that loop potentially then down to the southern portion. And then that way, if you wanted to walk 1.5 miles, you could walk 1.5 miles. If you wanted to walk 1/4 mile, you could walk 1/4 mile. You could walk in circles, or you could walk a great big loop, and just depending on how much exercise and the type of areas and activities that you wanted to see. Some people like wandering through the woods and around the pond. Some people like to be near the activity, and some may be taking care of kids on the playground, so they're doing the little loop there between the parking lot and around the west edge, and then just in that northwestern zone right there. So Abner Longley is fairly straightforward. The biggest thing was just looking at the needs you had and places to potentially incorporate those that came out of the 5-year plan. So softball being the one that takes up the most room and all of that. So any questions before I move to Memorial? Okay. With Memorial Park, we provided 2 options. If it's gonna turn the page. So the advantage with Memorial is the fact that we have a lot of existing features, and then looking at, obviously, within a park that is very active and very busy, that is home to a whole lot of activities from walking to, obviously, seashore, water park, tennis courts, basketball courts, volleyball courts, the old band shell, etc. So the park is heavily used. We know that there's several festivals. So some of the things that we took into consideration were how do we look at expansion for the future as it relates to the seashore water park. John even mentioned some concerns about how do you expand the park offices eventually, and different things in that. We've incorporated some of those comments. So in this particular scenario on Master Plan A, we've shown the continuation of the tennis courts up there to the northeast and their expansion, and also included pickleball courts, which pickleball and tennis are similar, but pickleball is a little simpler. You can get more courts. I have some clients that are actually converting their old tennis courts that aren't used to pickleball courts because you can do that. There are official pickleball leagues. It's an extremely fast-growing sport for all ages. The other side of that is that we know that we need some areas to expand in the water park area. We also know that we need more parking. So keeping in mind all those different features, we showed some different parking opportunities. Obviously, there's the blue area there is the expansion to the actual seashore, and that could be 2 or 3 phases, just depending on what that expansion might be. Then the parking to obviously wrapped around it, which would also then double for parking as you might have the festival or other activities within the park throughout the year. We also looked at an additional row of parking there on the west side of the existing, because that's a really wide open green area right now that really is not utilized. And when you're in full service in the summertime with all the different activities in the park, you are really short of parking for the water park. We also looked at expanding basketball courts and additional parking in that area, updating the playground, even potentially fencing in the playground so that the younger kids would have a more secure area that a child just couldn't go wandering off, especially when you look at that lower age group that's under 6. And so we just looked at some of those different areas. Obviously, you have some fairly high activity zones, and there's different schools of thought on how you group activity zones. There's one school of thought that says you keep all the really high activities all in the same general area, because then that allows you to use another area for a different kind of programming and a different kind of use. Memorial Park is actually set up kind of right now where you kind of have scattered uses throughout the park. So this particular plan kind of just continued that theme and kept like uses together. The next option that we're going to look at, we separated that a little bit to just give you an idea what that might look like. So instead of having all the tennis courts and the pickleball courts up in the northeast corner, we shuffled those down and took advantage of the expansion areas down there by the existing volleyball courts and the basketball courts, expanding the tennis courts, not taking anything away, but adding a few courts, pickleball, still adding basketball, still adding some parking, but that kept all those higher court uses all in the same general area. And that's one school of park design, is to keep all those activities going in the same area. Because one of the other things that you always look at is the ability to keep things secure and safe. And the more people are in an area, it becomes what we call in my world self-policing to a certain degree, because you have people in the area using it of different types. So whether that's basketball, tennis, pickleball, children at a playground, etc., there's lots of different activities. So there's more people, there's more sets of eyes. The other side of that is that in this particular park, you already have a fairly nice loop system. So it's easy for the city police also to be able to just wander through on their occasional beat and just check things out and make sure things are going okay. It also is easy for park staff to go out and check. That then frees you up, in the same token, then to potentially look at that northeast area as options for expanding what we call central open space and more informal areas, but it also opens it up for different kinds of programming, festivals, et cetera. Even potentially long-term, you could put a park office over there as the pool area expands, and that would allow you to take the existing park offices and use some of that as rental space that you could rent out as a part of the pool for a birthday party or something like that. So you could have an indoor space and an outdoor space that you could rent, since that's very close to your concession area. So it's really easy to police that. You can combine those two ideas and thoughts. It's just, John wanted me to really show that there's two different ways you could think about that, and he wanted to explore what that might look like. This evening, we know that everybody's got individual thoughts and preferences. So we're just here to put that out there for the general public. If they have comments, they can certainly contact the Parks Department, but also to get feedback from you if there's a plan that you prefer one versus another. Nothing's written in stone. It's just as the staff continues to look forward to different programming uses and as they update lighting, et cetera, and infrastructure within the park, we want to make sure that anything long-term we're looking at will fit in. We don't put lights or parking right where we're going to put a pickleball court eventually. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about either one of the options or even about Abner Longley.
Deb, I think I talked with John a couple of times, and I really like the second plan. Okay. The B. I think the security, everything being in one general area, it's going to be a lot easier to police. And I also think that the fence to go around the playground, I think that, in my opinion, would be a necessity. I think that's something that...
I think that's their long-term plan no matter what they do with that area. It's just a matter of how big it grows and how the different play spaces work together. That was one of the things I strongly recommended, given you've got parking going off in all directions. And with young kids, it's just easy to get sidetracked.
Well, when they have festivals and so forth, exactly. There, I mean, it makes it very, very hard to watch kids.
Yep.
So.
On Abner Longley, you had, I noticed the splash pool was mentioned in that.
Yes.
And I know at one time we definitely decided against that. Is it just back as a possibility, or?
The splash pad, from my understanding, is and was noted in the 5-year plan as a priority in Abner Longley. And my understanding was that in a perfect world, it would have been done this year. I know that they're in the process of looking. In fact, John and I are going to meet just to talk about that a little bit more, to just kind of look into it in a little more detail. I know that later they're going to, go through an actual design process and bidding process for a contractor. So my understanding was it's a fairly high priority, and it was a high priority in the 5-year plan. So this is just kind of the next iteration. I would tell you that where exactly it goes within the plan may be tweaked a little bit, and that's why I didn't get into any kind of fancy diagram, because what goes into it and the components that go into it.
Yeah, I'm just remembering back to long ago.
The reason it was cut out of the plan originally is because of money. When we were building, because we intended to do a splash pad down there when we did the water park, and it was money constraints. But right now the splash pad is back in, and as Deb said, it's been a priority with some of the council and the mayor, and it's something we wanted to do back then but couldn't, and now maybe we can. So that's where
I think John mentioned one time that the community at the south side was very interested in
Yes,
having
very
a splash
much so.
pad there.
Yes, they are.
A lot of walking, folks.
And that came out in the
using-
Right.
5-year plan. We heard from a lot of the neighbors that showed up to the meetings
Right.
as well, that they were very supportive.
It was just, at the time we were doing the water park, we were going to do that, and
I'd forgotten about that
we-
piece, but yeah.
We just didn't have it.
On the splash pad, Deb,
Yes.
I mean, is that something that as a city that it has to be manned? Or is this something
No.
that just literally, it just continues to run and?
It does not require an individual personnel like a lifeguard. It's not that type of, some people get a splash pad confused with a zero-depth pool, which is a walk-in entry type pool area, which does require lifeguards. A splash pad is more like individual jets that may be coming up out of the ground, and you may have one that, I mean, you can get very fancy, but you can have buckets, or you may have like
Right.
like a candy cane that's spraying out water, or I always like the water gun ones where you're shooting them at each other, you can propel jet across, but, and there's just a number of different features that are timed. They can be fairly substantial. I have some communities that did not have the money to replace their community pools. So, they've gone with smaller splash pads at individual parks to get water features that still allow people an opportunity to cool off, but they just, as you well know, aquatic facilities are not cheap. So you could do a couple of splash pads depending on the size and nature of the features, so.
Is that something that just runs continuously? I guess I'm not up with
From
the
dawn,
times.
you set it on an operation system,
Yeah,
and there's an
I was gonna say
activation
it's on
button,
the system.
and so you can control, for example, I have one client, there's, the activation button becomes active 10 in the morning, I think, 10 or 11 in the morning, and so anybody can come and hit that activation button up to a certain time in the evening. So, but they can't just come up and take a shower or something, and
That-
just activate it and run the water constantly.
My thought was in the middle of the morning, is that something that's going to be utilized?
You would be surprised.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I think.
Especially when it's really warm.
Yeah.
Temperature.
Especially when it's really warm. And the other advantage, John,
Oh, no. See, we
Oh,
can stop
he's thinking
it.
like the middle of the night.
No, we.
no,
we
it's,
can
there-
shut it
you can
off.
control that
Okay.
part.
Yeah.
And the other side of that is, from a security standpoint, you want to be able to, because most of your parks have dawn to dusk operation.
Right.
Right, that was my concern. There's
No,
there-
that's
There's
just part of the
apartments that are
program.
right there, and I can imagine that those would be used quite often if it was something that could just be 24/7.
I have 2 or 3 splash pads that are actually similar in nature. They have a softball complex or a baseball complex, et cetera, and there's a substantial, it's part of a park, a larger park. And the splash pad is a really nice feature for those that have come into town for a tournament, and they're hanging out for the day in the park. So the little kid, everybody goes over, hangs out at the splash pad, they do their thing, and then they have a 4 o'clock game, different types. It's just different types of activities and zones. I mean, you clean out the whole water system at the end of the season. One of the other beauties of a splash pad versus a pool is because of the lifeguard issue, et cetera. You can leave the splash pad on, till October 1st, where the pool sometimes has to shut down the second week of August when all your kids go back to school. So it extends that, a little bit of that summer season that we lose because of the changes in school calendars and the lifeguard issues. Quite truthfully, that's the biggest issue anymore, is the lifeguard issue.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions?
On the Memorial Park, there were
Yes.
2 red squares
Yes,
What-
that was the building expansion.
for the park, for possible park office down there. Okay.
Expanding on, the park building is kind of like flip an E around, so you've got like the one leg there, so if you filled in that gap on the north and south side of the one little entry area there with the roof, or you've got a T basically, so if you fill in this gap, because you really don't want to expand into the pool area.
No.
Because then you lose pool deck.
Right.
And that's revenue generating. So there's room that we could manipulate the parking area, et cetera, to allow for some expansion there. But in fact, John and I were even discussing that if you were really thinking big picture, as you would build out the pool, ultimately, you could leave a pool aquatic manager's office in there and then build another separate park office on the east side of the pool expansion that would separate those two. And we're talking 10, 15,
Right.
20
Right,
years, but as you
that's-
think bigger term.
Right.
And then that allows you to, have your pool manager or aquatic manager right there.
Right there on.
As your community would continue to grow and have other places that, you need to expand to.
Right, and that's why we're doing this. It's not going to happen in a year.
No. What we're trying, and as I said earlier, one of the things that John and I really thought as we talked about trail connections, the lighting issue in the park with the pedestrians, and just infrastructure and stuff going underground, that was one of the reasons we thought it was kind of important to just strategically think about where we might want to put some amenities so that you didn't have to come back and rerun wiring or it's easy to put conduit in the ground. You just don't have to move a bunch of wiring or storm sewers or if you've got drainage issues as you fix something, thinking about what might go there in the future. So flexibility is the name of the game.
Yes, it is. Did you have anything on the Conservation Club for this evening?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I was not asked to present anything.
Yeah, I didn't think you were. I was just curious.
No, ma'am. I'm not even aware of anything. How's that?
Okay. No, that's fine. I was just thinking, you had that preliminary plan.
Yes.
In the master plan.
Right.
And that's what I was thinking of looking
Yeah,
at.
right.
But no, that's fine.
And that ties into the overall, that was why we showed those trail connections up to the,
Right,
to
going
the
through
north.
up there.
It ties back in. And that's what, it's graphically hard to get them on all these small screens to get
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
to show up the way you want it to so you can see how it all connects together. But that's what John and I were talking about, was we need to do one plan that just shows all the pieces connected. Once we know for sure that you're okay with it, then we can put them together.
Right.
Put the puzzle pieces together and give you one big board. It just doesn't, it gets too small on the screen for you to see.
It does, yes. Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any new business to come before the board? I would like to bring up about changing 2 meetings. The meeting in April falls during the spring break, so we're proposing to move the April meeting to April 11th, and the July meeting falls on July 4th. So we're proposing to move the July meeting to July 11th. So I'm asking for a motion to change the April and the July meeting both to the 11th day of the month.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay,
Third.
You're covered.
Fourth.
we got it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Thank you. And we have visitors tonight. They're going to make a presentation. It's DJ and Celeste, and they'll be making a presentation on a skateboard park. Skate park. Skateboard, not skateboard, sorry. Skate park.
I got scared. You can open. I can open it. Yeah, you can open it.
Thank you all for. Thank you all for letting us present to you, and we hope that you can see our idea and we can carry along with it. So, should it appear up on the? Is the PowerPoint?
He's got it. Yeah.
He's got it. Okay, I was just making sure. All right.
So we would like to open up our presentation with a very relevant quote. It's by Mayor Dwight C. Jones. He's the former mayor of Richmond, which he says, "If your town doesn't have a skate park, it is a skate park," which is very, very true. As you've seen, most likely you've seen kids biking, skating out on the streets. That can prove very, very dangerous, but without a skate park, often kids tend to rely on the streets to excel at their extreme sport. So a skate park has many benefits. There's oftentimes a lower misuse of police resources. A lot of kids are getting into extreme sports such as scootering, bicycling, and skateboarding. It provides a safe, stable environment for kids to skate. There's a statistic by the University of Emerson that says that the most deaths due to skateboarding is because of a lack of a skate park, because oftentimes kids are hit by cars while skateboarding or while bicycling. And if we were to have a skate park, it would provide a very safe environment that's closed off to the public and closed off to cars, so it would lower the death rate in skateboarding. It also provides exercise, which helps with obesity rates and for overall standard of living. It produces an economic value. We'll get into that later on in the presentation. And it lessens drug usage, which we will also get into later on. Okay. About obesity, extreme sports tend to teach precision. It teaches dedication and muscle stability and a lot of other things. It offers a full body workout burning 150 to 500 calories per hour, which is more exercise than a kid tends to get in around 5 hours of just walking or running, etc. It also heightens physical endurance, and it's been proved that skateboarding lowers obesity by 48% and diabetes by, I think, 58%.
And other health benefits, it improves class performance. I can vouch for that myself. Wasn't too good in class, but with skateboarding, it actually taught me to keep trying and keep pushing myself over and over. It reduces the risk of obesity, as we said, heart disease, diabetes, and pain tolerance. I've fallen a lot, and within anything, running, biking, swimming, anything you could get really injured on. And with skateboarding, I haven't suffered really hardly many heavy injuries. I've sprained my ankle a few times, and we've all done that from time to time. And so it helps with pain tolerance. And every time I fall now, I can just brush myself off, and I'm ready to go again. And in drug use and other crime, skateboarding helps the drug use drop by 60%, as you can see, and people who exercise 3 to 4 times a week are less likely to drink or use drugs. And I've seen this quite a bit through Lafayette, Monticello. I've seen it in Carmel, Zionsville, and they all have skate parks as well. And everybody I've known from there personally, they used to be involved in very wrong things, but when they started skateboarding and scootering and BMXing, they were very healthy, very academically inclined, and that shows to prove. And the violent crime rate does drop 29% because people are so focused on the time with skateboarding and exercising, they will always be there, they will always have something to enjoy, something to wake up for. And call service with police definitely drops 23%. And
With the calls dropping, a lot of property owners have to call their police officers, their local police officers, to come stop the kids from skating on their private property. And with the skate park, you won't be on private property, you'll be on a skate park, so it drops service calls. So, yeah. Okay, skate parks benefit the town very much. It gives families and people of all ages to do. Skateboarding is not just a teenage thing. There's a lot of professional skateboarders that are above the age of 30 even that skateboard. I just saw a kid around age 8 skating down the street, and it was snowing. You wouldn't believe it because it was so cold, but people love the sport so much that they will do it whenever they can, no matter how young or how old you are. It also expands the town's versatility. It's better to have a lot of things to do in a town than it is to have a lot of the same things to do. I've moved around a lot in my life, and I'm from Georgia, so I've definitely seen a lot in my life. But in Indiana, especially in Lebanon, the town's very small and it's very homely. And I enjoy it a lot. It's a very cute town, and I think everyone's close-knit, and I enjoy that. And I think having a skate park and other commodities will help the overall standard of living because people will tend to enjoy a lot more things and have a lot more options to do. And as we said, it helps crime rate, and it brings in extra revenue.
And continuing with that, how she said it was very homely town and how it brings people together with the skate park, from people young to old to teenagers. They could all come together and meet off of one thing, so that makes more friends and such things like that. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to take this one, or do you got it? I did this one.
Okay. So, of course, as capitalists, we are going to have to talk about the economics of a skate park. I made a business plan, and I believe it was passed to you guys, but I'm not quite sure.
Yes, we got it.
Okay. At the creation of the business plan, we projected our population to be around 15 to 30 people per day, and if we were going to charge $5 per entry, we can make upwards of $36,000 per year. And it's not quite per year because it'd only be the 7-month season. However, after the creation of that business plan, we've decided to make it more open or accessible. We would drop our prices to maybe like $2 and offer season passes and other things, but we could also factor in selling merchandise and selling town coupons and getting donations and such. We could also help local businesses sell their products by creating business partnerships and maybe hanging up their banners at the skate park, because the thing with our skate park is that what we would be doing is we would be doing an intermediate project. It wouldn't be quite a town project, and that's quite the interesting thing of our proposal. So we were thinking of using the land at the Conservation Club area. It's the little paved area. What I found is that the soil is contaminated there, and it would cost upwards of $10,000 to uplift all the soil and to replant it. But with the skate park, we could use that small slab of concrete and just put on some wooden obstacles and then start getting some profit for the town. And we could see how popular the skate park is and see if it's something that the town might want to go into for the future. So our proposal is kind of for a testing period that I would pay for myself, really. So the thing with the skate park is that there are going to be upkeep costs. We're going to need professional help if the town were to get involved. And we could accept donations, but of course, with it being our own project, we would cover that ourselves. But if the town were to get involved, it would help a lot. But I think the idea of an intermediate period would be very helpful for the town to see how beneficial the park would be to the town. Okay.
And what the skate park could offer that I see at many other skate parks is lessons. I see a lot of things in Indy where a lot of the older guys like to teach the younger kids how to skateboard, and it's a very rising thing. I'm always seeing all over social media, and those kids, they grow, and a lot of those kids have been signed to big name companies as well because they've gotten so good over time, and their little small town where they were from has been put on the map, has gotten more recognition from just that. And we can talk about the season passes, how there's usually at the 7th-month season with the skate park, a lot of people would come in with that warm weather, and so people could pay for season passes to just have like an entry thing. They pay $30 and they'll have 30 days free or something like that. The merchandise, as we said, we could sell the town's merchandise, do sponsorships, such as things like that. Joe LePage has also talked about putting a little concession stand there, like way later in the future if the town were wanting to go with it. Sponsorships, as I've said. Then there would also be concerts, like with local bands, little underground bands that want to perform to get their name out there. They could pay to play there, or we could advertise to them so they could play music while everybody is skating. And it'd also be a very big hangout area for a lot of young kids. Since there's not many places to go for the young kids we've talked to as well, they either get involved with sports, which is very good, but the other kids that don't do anything, they usually sit around because there's nowhere to go, and so a lot of them don't have a car, and this would be a great hangout area for all of them.
And finally, we have a petition, which of course helps our cause. We had a lot of people at both the high school administration and a lot of people sign this petition, and a lot of them had a common response that they would love to see a skate park because it's such a creative sport and it just gets the kids' minds off doing nothing and going outside and getting, their vitamin D and such. Mm-hmm. So, any questions?
Wow.
Nice presentation.
You put a lot of work into your report.
Yes, you did. This is a very impressive presentation. I kind of want to get a little right. This is a lot for us to absorb right now, but so you're talking about taking a piece of property at the park, and how would you secure it? So
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's already fenced in. It's where the old shooting range was.
Right, but I'm not sure that fence is staying there, but that's another thing we need to talk with Deb too. But you would be manning this to check passes and to see. What size are we talking about too?
The size of the skate park?
Yes.
Just how big that slab of concrete is.
We can do it any size really. However much like money we put into it will determine the size of it, and the more wood we buy or the more iron that we buy to build, that would determine the size really.
And after our meeting with the mayor and with the park director, they said it was about an acre of just concrete.
So you're looking at making something that large?
Yes.
See, I had no idea, so, okay.
At the parking area?
Where they're talking about right now, I need to look at the Conservation Club master plan, but where they're talking about is the property that still needs to be covered because of the contamination. And I didn't know where the parking was coming in. That's why I kind of want to look at the master plan, and we need to, talk to Deb, because I think Deb talked to you guys tonight because she's put our 5-year plan together.
What about insurance? What is your...
Okay. So with any extreme sport, of course, there's obviously the risk of injury and of negligence. However, with an extreme sport, there's always the defense of risk of assumption, as well as we could make them sign waivers if they're above 18. That's also a possibility we've looked into. And there's also, we could put up signs and such, which of course would help our defense of assumption of risk.
I mean, I like your idea. Personally, I'm not real sure that I like the idea of where it's at.
And then
It's not a real, I guess it's not a very easy place to be patrolled. And I know that, if I remember right, we had a small skate park at one point.
We did, and I talked to Joe about that, and he said back then when you had the small skate park, it was vandalized heavily through BMXers and the people that just wandered through there to spray paint the place.
It was very misused.
Mm-hmm. And nowadays, with the new generation coming in, you can see skaters. We have a lot of supporters, people that are willing to push forward, people that are willing to help us out, definitely. So we know, like, locals, as for a fact, they try everything they could to keep it high maintenance. And also with the gate in there, if it were to stay there, we know people wouldn't go in there in after hours because we would have the gate locked. We would definitely be patrolling it at all times. And another idea that we had is to increase artists throughout the school to, make art there. To, like, let's say we take our wooden obstacles and that's where they were to paint something, it would increase the beauty of the park, and then that would make it very iconic for other people outside Lebanon to come.
Would there be a specific hours?
Yes.
Okay.
It would be dawn to dusk, basically, but we would be patrolling it ourselves. With the thing with creating sculptures and art, if you encourage it, it's less likely to happen. People tend to do things more if they're told not to. So we're thinking that if we allow graffiti, it will kind of decrease the want for that. But if you do, then it's fine because it was allowed, right? And also with the area, it's open to change, of course. We were just thinking that maybe that'd be the easiest spot to do because it was already paved. Right. However, our biggest problem is land. If need be, if I just got a plot of land, I'd pay for the concrete myself because it's a project I'm really, really passionate about. It's just the fact that the land is the biggest priority.
And another thing, with the area it's located, I remember the mayor has talked about populating Southside more and bringing more recognition down there. So that's why we thought this would be a good area for it. We saw the land, we saw the concrete that was laid down, so we thought this would be a perfect spot. And there are a lot of other spots throughout town, a lot of empty grass areas close to the high school, close to other businesses, and all those sorts of things. We feel like that would be a good idea, but for our sake and for the town's sake, we feel that it would be best closer towards Southside with the park there, and then with other ideas going into Southside Park as well.
I think I was just thinking more of the security and more of the
Or s-
visual effect from the road. I mean, you know, that's really back kind of,
It's a little isolated.
it is
that-
isolated, and that would be the only thing I would be concerned with, is that there's not a lot of patrolling, or it probably wouldn't be patrolled very much.
I think I was thinking that you met with the police. Was that, or,
We did. We
Yes.
went by to see the park director, and one of the police officers was there. So it
Okay,
wasn't
that's
quite a
where I got
formal
that.
meeting, but we did talk to him, and he said that it'd be a really good idea.
And I've also talked to a few officers
Okay.
many times myself, and they love the idea. They want the idea to happen very badly. They think it's a very great idea. They've been trying to do something as well, from what I've been told. A lot of the elderly folks throughout the town, over by the Flats and Memorial Hall, they've said they've tried putting in a motion as well, because they want me out of
I
their
think
area.
they're just tired of calling.
Yeah.
When you said you talked to cops, I was wondering what that meant.
No, not in a horrible way. No, like sometimes when they're rolling by, they'll roll down their window and they'll just start a conversation,
Sure.
because they're all very friendly, as
Sure.
you know, and they love to keep our town safe. And we thank the police very much for what they do, and we want to thank Officer Pickett was his name.
Yes.
We want to thank him for all of his duty as well. Are there any more questions?
the property? Yeah, I mean, we
Consider
need
it
to,
before,
because this
yes.
is extensive. Good job. But this is a lot for us to absorb, right? And I told them we would probably need to take it under consideration and check things out. But a very nice presentation. Thank you. Very well thought out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we'll take this under consideration, and I can't give you a time frame, but we won't drag it out and see. We need to get with the park director and Dad with our plan and see, you know, where it can go from there.
Okay. If you need our contact information, of course, we could give it to you
Is it
if you
on-
need to get in
is
touch.
Is it on
Is
here?
it on here somewhere?
Actually, no.
No, I don't believe it is.
Which would have been good to add, actually.
Would you like us to come up there and write down our contact information for you?
Yes,
All right.
you need to leave us your contact information.
All right, perfect.
Emails and phone, and so that would be good.
We can do that after the meeting.
Yep. So are there any more questions or any more concerns?
Thank you so much for allowing us to present, and we hope you enjoyed our presentation and will take into consideration our proposal.
Thank you.
Thank
you so
Very-
much.
Very well presented, yes, nicely done. Thank you. Want to write it on there? I'll get
She has it, we have access.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
Here, very nicely done.
Really did a nice job.
Are you both currently students at the high school? What class are you in? Juniors, both of you? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the director's report. John was unable to attend this evening, so I'll be giving the director's report. Taylor Edens has officially accepted the office manager position, and we are now currently looking for a program director. Applications will be accepted until March 12th with interviews to follow. Currently, we have hired Mark Richardson on as a full-time maintenance employee. We are also still looking for part-time maintenance positions to start this spring, as well as lifeguard and concession staff for the summer. We have started training our adult managers, Lori and Tiffany, for the pool this summer. I am very excited to have them with us this summer. It will be a tremendous help. We finished up our downtown project last week, and we're now turning our focus to gearing up for the warmer weather. The Easter egg hunt will be March 31st at 10:30 at her cabin. The Easter bunny will be present for pictures right after the hunt. Register now in the park office. The daddy-daughter dance will be April 14th from 6 to 9 p.m. The dance will be held at the Herman B. Wells Community Room at Lebanon High School. Tickets go on sale February 26th, so the tickets are on sale now. It is $15 per couple and $5 per additional child. So that's the director's report. Now, before we consider the claims and adjourn the meeting, I'd like to have a moment of silence for all the tragedies that happened within our city last week. If everyone would just bow their heads. Thank you. Okay, now if everyone's had a chance to look at the claims, I'd entertain a motion to approve the claims.
I'll move that we approve the claims.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. If there's nothing else to come before the board this evening, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Thank you for joining us this evening.